Why don't I say that we'll come to order, that this is the time and the place set for CEO selection. We have two separate interviews set for this afternoon with the two finalists. And the first finalist is Aaron Kraft, and I think, Michelle, we're ready to speak with him now.
Okay.
Hello, Aaron.
Hi, how are you today?
Great, how about you?
Wonderful.
So, the first thing I want to say is thank you. Thank you for going through this process. I know you've talked to a lot of people over the last couple of weeks, that it's taken some time and probably some energy to do that, and I just want you to know we really, really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It was
fun.
Yes, it was. It was my pleasure. Great group of folks that I met with. So
we have received the feedback from the various panels and members of the community. So this is really the final interview. I don't know that it will take the entire time that we have allotted. It will depend on the questions that we have, but it will allow for follow-up questions that the board may have on some of that feedback, any final questions anybody has.
Okay.
And then an opportunity for you to make any statement or ask any questions of us, should you have any after all of this time. So
thank you.
I think that I will open it up to the board.
All right, thank you, Diane.
Anybody have any questions?
Unless anyone else wants to get it started, I guess I'll ask a question.
All right, Joel.
And Aaron, good to see you again. Thank you so much for taking the time and being part of this process. As Diane said, it's been challenging to do it virtually, but it's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Likewise.
I just wanted to ask kind of about, I guess you'd say, the learning curve for a position like this. Des Moines Waterworks faces a number of evolving issues such as regionalization and our cost of service study. Managing issues like these requires an understanding of the underlying information, but also the region's political dynamics and the players involved. In short, there are a lot of moving pieces and a lot of people involved. So how would you get up to speed if hired as CEO?
That's a great question. I'm already doing that. In fact, right now, I'm trying to find out a little bit more about each of the stakeholders, the wholesale customers in particular, so I can actually walk in the door with a lot more knowledge than you would expect. So it's been challenging trying to find information on the internet, and obviously from the day I set foot, on your soil, I will make an initial effort right away, of course, to connect with these folks. And we had these conversations in the panel boards, very similar questions that you're asking right now. And I think they too are concerned that I might get a little bit off track with something else, because everyone recognizes how important the regionalization topic is and how quickly everyone wants to move forward with an understanding, of the layout, and basically looking for a decision from the participants. So Joel, I would hit the ground running, and I think I've already done some of that background homework. I'm not saying that I'm going to know everything when I walk in, but there's got to be on my part some dedication to learning more. And as soon as I find out an answer, I don't have to wait till I get there. I can start reaching out to folks, and finding out a little bit more on one-to-one by phone, even though that's not preferable. But in today's climate, that's probably what's going to have to take place, even if I'm on soil. So it's exciting. I'm learning a lot. I think you bring up a good point about the politics, because you can't always read into that with what you see, reported in the newspaper or other articles, or even for that fact, just what I've gathered from feedback from those participants already. So it would be very active, very swift, very thorough. I know how important it is to get the facts, and I certainly want to understand them, but I also at the same time want to understand where they're coming from in their opinions, and maybe have a good constructive discussion on why or why not.
Aaron, this is Graham. I'd like to key off on that question, if I may, and that is, talk to us a little bit about, you'd be the new guy here. I mean, there's a lot of our employees, and we're proud of this fact, have been with Des Moines Waterworks for a long time. As we've discussed in our previous conversations, we have a very active and helpful union and members here. Talk to us a little bit about your leadership style and how, as the new guy, you're going to approach team building.
Okay, good. Because I have a lot of experience, obviously. I've been the new guy in several organizations. And, where it really helps is, like, in particular here, I'm in Rialto. I have one, we'll call it a project, but it's a 30-year. I am the GM for the city. Even though I am paid by Veolia, I'm the GM of the utilities here. And although in order of magnitude smaller, we deal with some of the same situations, same customers, same demographics, in fact, you'd be surprised. And that being said, where I think I can contribute a little more is when I worked up in Vancouver, we had this, for those of you that I had this discussion with, this hub and spoke operation. So I had 7 projects. 4 of them were either with a utility or a municipality, where we ran both water and wastewater, or at least wastewater and at least water. 5 of them. I'm sorry. I forgot about Cascade Water. So I have these pieces where I've been the new guy in many organizations. And in a lot of times, like you mentioned, I mean, when I met your staff, I mean, the average, longevity of those folks is almost 20 years, and incredible resource. And I know there's some apprehension to bring in the new guy who's gonna, maybe they're worried about being taken down a path that they may not align with, or that I think they're just a little bit more scared. But, comfort, in that conventional, and I'm not necessarily saying Ted is conventional, but there's comfort in selecting an internal candidate that has that kind of experience, because it's safe, it's familiar, they know already where he's coming from, they've had a year to see where Ted is at, and where their organization is heading, because he's been your leader and representative that whole year. So I understand the concern, of course, with the board and the apprehension of staff members and even potentially a union. But I think I felt really comfortable. I felt a good connection with all 3 of those stakeholder organizations when we had our interviews. And I think they understand I'm very, very much what you see. I'm not very selective. I'm not, openly judgmental. I can't say I'm not going to have some judgments about, some of the things that we're faced with, but I have a good, or I can establish a good rapport, so they understand that it's important to me to make fair, equitable decisions for everyone, and that really my goal is for the intent of, the longevity of the organization. I want to uphold your vision, your mission, and that being said, we all hope is in line with the customer's vision and mission, and that's a key connection. And I think I can help maybe bridge any gaps that are involved in that perception, maybe. So it's really important to be open, candid, transparent, available. So I will spend an inordinate amount of time to make sure that I can establish the relationships so people understand, the integrity that I have, and that they can build trust in me and be proud that I would represent your organization.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question that I'd like to ask, and it came from one of the comments that, you know, there was not enough discussion about the role of the water utility in tackling surface water pollution and that kind of thing. So my question to you is, what is the role? What should be, what do you think the role of the utility should be in addressing some of these issues?
Well, in my humble opinion, I think we as an organization should take the leadership role. I mean, this is the single largest utility, you know, in your entire state. It represents a watershed, you know, that encompasses almost a third of the state. And it's a critical issue. It's a critical concern that not just impacts, you know, whatever direction the decision would end up with when you are talking about, for example, the nitrate pollutions due to runoff from agricultural activities. This is interesting because I had a very good conversation with the mayor about this very issue. I think he's lobbied heavily for support, urban support in protecting the groundwaters, you know, that you folks are faced with, because a lot of obviously the pollutant contribution that you receive comes from your neighbors to the north. And it's key to develop and establish a very working relationship. Obviously, parties aren't going to agree right out the gate. They'll never come to an agreement, but there has to be a negotiation and a partnership in the approach in tackling that source water protection. So it truly involves very intimate relationship building, staying on top of regulations, working with legislators, key officials. You know, it involves politics. It certainly does, and I'm very comfortable with that. I'm actually proud to say, and I don't think I ever brought this up with anyone on either of the panels, but I used to be the chair of the Iowa Recycling Association, and there was a push when I was in to remove the bottle bill, while we were actually pushing to expand it to take on water bottles, you know, plastics. We met with the Senate, we met with the House. We spent a lot of time, you know, all of us on the board, like yourselves, you know, nearly every hour was a volunteer hour, and we spent much time trying to make sure that we didn't at least lose ground, because it took so long for that organization to even get that implemented. So I think I have experience, I have poise. I know when to say when. I know when to recognize defeat. You know, I don't take it personally, but we certainly have to lead the initiative, in my opinion, because we're such an established, well-respected organization, and I think the public is expecting us to take that initiative.
Can we drill down a little bit on that? You say a leadership role. I mean, and you talked about building relationships and whatever. What would you do?
I think we should work with, you know, in particular, the cities that, you know, with our customers, you know, the city councils, myself and our board should work collaboratively with them to establish a plan. We need to make sure that as a team, we all have the same expectations and we're looking for the same outcome, which I believe in general we do. Everybody wants to protect our source water, but how we go about it, we may not all be in agreement. And I think before we tackle that initiative, before we sit down and have discussions with and meet with legislators, working on ways we can work with the agricultural community to help, you know, to help them with runoff, to do a better job, you know, looking at more organic opportunities instead of pumping nitrogen in the soil, just, you know, where it gets over applied and ends up in the groundwater source or in our surface water sources. So it's an active, participative leadership role with our customers and with others. I mean, I think there should be an educational campaign and awareness, asking for assistance in our desire to help our community protect its water sources for the future.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next question.
Hi, Andrea.
Hi. I don't know. I actually just wanted to thank you for your time again. I had 2 questions prepared, and they have both been asked.
Okay.
So I'm not sure I have any additional questions to add. I just wanted to thank you for taking so much time to meet with so many stakeholders in our community. We think that it's an important part of the process to involve our stakeholders, our customers, community leaders in this process. And I know it's not been a simple task given the current environment, but we appreciate your patience and flexibility in doing so. And I'll turn it over if anybody else has any additional questions that haven't already been asked.
Well, thank you. I want you to understand it was fun. It was my pleasure. I really enjoyed it. I think more than you can imagine. It's very enlightening. I feel like I'm a cheerleader for your organization already because I've learned so much about it, and it's exciting to see, I think, how we can shape the future of not just Des Moines Waterworks, but how we can shape the future on how we protect our water sources overall. I mean, I think beyond the local and regional initiatives, I think we can piggyback with some national campaigns that our trades organizations are working on, that our counterparts are working on in other states. So I think, and having seen how Des Moines Waterworks is represented, especially, and I got to learn so much more on Friday when I spoke with the mayor, and I did not understand until we spoke how intimately involved he's been in some of these initiatives at the Washington, D.C. level, and the committees that he's on, and international committees, and people are looking to Des Moines for help and answers, and they're looking to see what we do and what we can do to shape the future. Yeah, go ahead, Diane.
Oh, no. Oh.
I was actually gonna back up there because you made me remember something.
Yeah.
Thinking about all of those committees and organizations that the mayor's involved in, and also all the different players that are part of our regionalization discussion, as well as our large staff base. What would you see as a reasonable timeline or time frame that you might need to familiarize yourself with everyone to be able to move some of these initiatives forward, like regionalization and like starting to build up a relationship with our union members and our labor force?
Okay, I would not take an approach where I have to sit down initially and meet with every single stakeholder and every party before we move. It would be concurrently. So I would seek to do everything I can. We know how people's schedules are. So there'll be, great opportunities, and there'll be some that are missed along the way. But in a path to take a 30, 60, 90-day approach to especially with regionalization issue in the forefront, I think I've mentioned that my personal ultimate goal or recommendation would be, at least at the board level, that we target, the end of the year or sooner, to have an understanding of who's in, who's out, where we're headed, and how we're going to get there. I don't think there's any reason to push. I'm not saying that people have been pushing this off, but even under today's climate, we have to find a way to make it work and to stay on course and on schedule. So I had mentioned that I typically put together and I would share, with board feedback a 180-day plan, but I would focus, inherently on the 30, 60, 90-day upfront loaded approach to make sure that I can meet with at least the majority of the stakeholders. And when I say that, I hate to use that so softly, but, as many as staff members, as many, one-on-ones with board members, with wholesale customers, with other organizations or entities that, are pro or even con, when it comes to Des Moines Waterworks. But I really need to work on a live basis and take the approach where we're running with this, and there may be some folks that fall behind or back, and I would do everything I can to catch up. There's no way any of us can do this all in 40 hours a week, but that's what's kind of, to me, is exciting about it. There's so much opportunity where we can get in front of the public, at public events. We might be sitting 6 feet apart from each other, but we can still talk about how we can get together. It was interesting this morning on the news. We just saw the first services here at a church local nearby, and to see they were like 16 feet apart in these pews, and it was just that's how it's going to be. And if that's how it's going to be, at least we don't wait till it gets back to the norm, because it's going to be a year for that plus to take place. So with all due respect and nothing but excitement, I think I can energize the initiative to move this type of, or primarily, of course, water quality issues and regionalization in the forefront of my 180-day plan.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate your answer.
Yeah.
Aaron, I will echo what the other members of the board have said. Thank you so much for your time and your energy. In the interview that you and I had, we talked about board member expectations. I presented you with the idea of, tell me what you expect for us as a board. We serve at the pleasure of the mayor of the city of Des Moines. We don't even get free water as a payment. So anyway, it's something that I think we all have a passion for in what we do. But as a new leader comes in, I think it's important to understand what your expectations would be. And I have my notes here, but I thought it might be of interest to the other members of the board if you shared with them what your expectations are of us.
Yes, really, of course, learning, having had the opportunity to meet with you all individually, it was nice to know. I asked you, most of you, I think, at least the question, how did you end up on the board? I want to establish a rapport with you to understand where you're coming from, because it can help me better key in on why you may be swaying one direction versus another. It really allows me the opportunity, if we can keep open dialogue, and really a professional relationship and a respectful one, because I know how difficult it is. To me, a 3-2 vote isn't necessarily successful. It got the initiative that we brought forward a decision, whether it was pro or con, whatever the item may be. At least I would, it's not a hung jury. It's something that I would respect. But even after those decisions, I would hope you would understand and not be offended that afterwards, if I came to each of you to find out, why, or why not, I really think that would help me understand maybe taking a more open approach, or maybe I didn't divulge all the information that everyone needed to make a good decision. Not to say that decisions pro or con were bad, just I want to make sure that I do my homework, I research everything, I present you the facts, and that you can professionally make a judgment on your part. But at the same time, if I can get feedback from you folks and constructive criticism on ways that I could have done better to present information to you, or people that I could have connected with maybe that I didn't maybe when we present things. And, you know, a lot of it is going to be at the staff level, at the management level. But when it comes to huge subjects like regionalization and water quality, there's going to be contacts that you may have or resources that you know I should connect with that I as a new person coming in, you know, wouldn't have those relationships or know those connections yet. So I would hope you would, you know, we could work together to really, I have this big focus that, you know, I hope we can collaboratively together, at least on an annual basis, review our missions and objectives and find a way to partner to bring them forward. And I think that's how partnerships work. And to me, that's one of the most exciting parts of the job. I mean, I have good working relationships with the board members now. I don't know. We had a utility commission meeting last night. It went very, very long, not as long as the city council meeting. It went till about 9:30 last night. And the city council meeting went till 2 in the morning. And it was interesting because we're all learning how we approach. They had their first open meeting in their council chambers, and they wanted to recognize and understand that folks couldn't make it there, and that they wanted to open the door to every avenue of communication through the meeting. So they were accepting phone calls during the meeting. They listened to voicemail messages. They took emails, chats. One council member had a Twitter account. There were people tweeting him while he was in there. That's why it went so long. They wanted to gauge how they can continue to make sure that the public feels a part of the process, because it's inherent that they feel left out, because you can't just walk in, you know, without a mask, you know, without any concern or, you know, or respect for, you know, neighbors when it comes to COVID. And these are the things I want to work with you to approach, because I don't want us to lose that connection with our partners, our customers, you know, and the other stakeholders, and certainly our staff. And I'm kind of glad you brought that up, because as a board, you may feel a bit disconnected in this new climate, because I certainly recognize that staff members do, not necessarily the management, but when I had the opportunity to speak with the union staff members, I felt sincerely and wholeheartedly that they feel a little bit out of the loop. And I think it's merely by means of they just don't have that personal connection like they used to. You know, they don't walk up to their supervisors. But as a board, I think we have every opportunity to pick up the phone, and we owe it to each other to stay tuned and to stay in touch. And I feel that. I think I can make that connection, and I believe you folks. I hope you folks believe you can make that connection with me.
Thank you, Aaron.
I'll just say this: if you come to join us and and we ever have a meeting that goes to 2 a.m., we're going to have a serious problem.
Okay. Well, it isn't going to be me, because I'm not super chatty after midnight. So,
you've talked a lot, and we've talked a lot today about and kind of things political outside of the organization. You've looked at our operations, and you have a long track record of dealing with organizations. What's an opportunity out there that maybe, and you can answer on the others if you want, but what's an opportunity out there when it comes to operations that you think that you would like to focus on for us?
Really, staying more connected, making sure we find avenues to communicate with the staff. I find it here, it's a lot easier when you have smaller staffs to stay connected, because generally you can be out in the field more often. That was the fun part of my job when I worked up north in Washington and Oregon, was because when I went to those sites, you know, 2, 3, 4, depending on the items on the agendas, you know, 5, sometimes 5 times a month, there wasn't a day when I was there that I wouldn't connect with the staff, because they were relatively small. But here, in this particular organization I'm in, it's nearly impossible. We have 3 divisions. We're spread out all over the entire city. We're in the COVID situation. But what I do now is to stay connected with them. I make random calls to staff members during normal working hours. Respectfully, I reach out to their supervisors to make sure there's nothing, super critical that I'm interrupting them with. And I send, we still get together. The last one, we have quarterly meetings with all hands. So if you're not on vacation, you're not on an emergency water break, you're not on a sewers cleanup or something, everyone is, we meet at our community center. And we round robin, and we have agendas put in place, but we actually have training exercises. We have awards, prizes, just anything related to the climate, the current events. It's not always about water. It's about, like, for example, we had a Red Cross blood drive right before the COVID incident. And I was shocked. I was surprised. Almost half of my staff signed up over a 2-day blood drive, which was good. And they brought their spouses in, and one of the customer service manager brought his kid in. We try to stay connected as much as we can on a personal level. So even though I won't have hours and hours and hours to spend with each member, I try to find a connection, professional and personal. I'm not very good initially with names, but I'm very good with faces. So I can find that connection. And really, communication is really what I'm getting at, Graham. I think that's really, it's in any organization, there's always room for improvement.
Right.
I
get that. But think about, is there a business opportunity or something about Waterworks where you've been researching us and you say maybe we've missed an opportunity, or boy, that really gets me excited about that job because I think with my background, I can come in and we can do something different at Waterworks. Has anything struck you like that?
Well, I haven't been able to dive into the actual operational functions. I've only been able to gather from your budgets where you're at, the capital improvements that you're working on, and gauging based on some of the questions that the management team asked me. I mean, I certainly understand. We had an interesting, Des Moines Waterworks has delayed the implementation of Rialto's CIS system. We are using AUS Infinity, and that schedule delay because of COVID issues and our go live date has been pushed back 3 months. So we're already dealing with some of the same issues. And it's interesting because we vetted twice to the City Council and the Utility Commission a recommendation to switch out our archaic in-code CIS system here for utility billing. And we were unsuccessful the first time only because of budgetary restrictions. Then we presented it on our dime. We fronted the capital. We can loan ourselves the money at near zero interest rate, and we packaged it to the city to sell it. And so we're looking at some of the same initiatives. I think there's always an opportunity to gauge the customer needs. When we initially rolled out our AMI metering technology, we were really looking at, because the council, and in particular the mayor, wanted to be able to use her cell phone to see what her daily water consumption was, to make sure she didn't have leaks in her irrigation system. Interestingly enough, and on the fence, another council member was interested, but really the customers weren't interested in that high level. So we set up our meter replacement to have the necessary connections. We have these NICOR cables on all of our new meters, residential and commercial, so we can tie in whether we go an infrastructure system where we're mounting repeaters and receivers on water towers or street lights, or we go full cell. But we're looking at some of the same things. Really, there's an opportunity because, let's face it, you guys understand that older meters are not as accurate. They tend to leak more. There's an opportunity there to generate or offset revenues whereby you may be losing, especially in today's climate. When when we were at our utility commission meeting last night, we just had to express to them that we're losing about, just on our little level, about nearly $100,000 a month on not charging late fees to customers because we've waived those. Well, that's $1.2 million in revenue if we continue on this path. We didn't present them with any recommendations, but it would be my job to investigate those type of deltas where you folks are potentially losing revenue and to find solutions on how we can offset that. I'm not saying, we have to, move forward and stop this, we have to charge customers. That's not what I'm getting at. I want to give you alternates, make sure I investigate other opportunities. There's federal funding coming forward potentially to help bridge that gap. It's important to stay on top of it. Just over the past week, I've attended some infrastructure funding opportunities at the federal level with EPA presentations, congressmen, Senate leaders talking on some of these WEF and AWWA initiatives to ensure that they're really helping their customers. So staying connected with our trades organizations will help us make sure we're on top of some of those opportunities to help offset some of the losses that we're going to be faced with.
Thanks for that. And forgive me, I turn my video off every once in a while because I have a wonky internet where I am. And it's
oh, that's okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
One more from me if we have time.
Sure.
Aaron, I wanted to follow up on a question that Sue asked. I thought that was a great question about expectations for the board. And it got me thinking about similar question, just more narrowly focused on regionalization. And I acknowledge this is a hard question to answer until you're actually in the job, and an honest question, because I don't know what the right answer is, but what would you want the board to do to help push regionalization forward? What role would you want the board to take? Is it just standing behind you and in support and giving policy direction, working with elected officials, kind of public communications? What role could the board play when it comes to pushing regionalization forward?
Thank you for opening the door, because you will be asked by me. I think it shows solidarity. Say, for example, if I'm having discussions that I just can't make a connection with someone in an explanation, and with all due respect, and not that it's an angry, arguable debate, but I think it shows some solidarity if I call upon you folks, and maybe having a board member and myself, I'm not saying we got to hold a meeting, bring that stakeholder to a meeting and have the discussion, but there's times when I think we owe it to our projected outcome to work together, and if that sometimes requires your attendance to help make a connection, bridge a gap, get a point across, or maybe you're sitting in observing and you can recognize what I may be leaving out, or a piece of information that I'm just not quite able to explain, and you may be able to do in a better job. You might see it from a different perspective. So really, thank you, Joel. I think you opened the door, and I do that today. I've asked, like when I attend, we tend to focus on, we have a lot of our public meetings at the senior center. They seem to be more engaged, whether it's a negative item or a positive item. We get support in one fashion or another, whether something gets pushed to failure or something gets pushed to success. We like that connection. I work a lot with educators because I've even had a teacher, a high school teacher, a science teacher here at Miller High School help me in a conservation campaign. And strictly on a volunteer basis, we just developed a good working relationship when I gave presentations to high school students about career initiatives in the water industry. And I said, hey, he said, anything I can do for you? And I said, yeah, could you? Actually, yeah, there is. Could you help me with this, conservation initiative we're with? I think he was taken back a bit, but I'm not shy. I am going to ask you for help especially when I feel that I'm just not able to do enough, and that I think having a board member there in some cases might make the difference. I don't know right now what your each of your professional relationships are. You know, if you're on a one-on-one, you're calling up, you know, Christine from, you know, West Des Moines, or I don't know. And of course, I quickly want to get on board and see where you stand with those folks. I don't want to disrupt a relationship you may have. I want to find a way to complement it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, Joe.
Well, it looks like we're done with questions. I guess I'll give you one more opportunity. Is there anything left that you want to say to all of us after all this time? And again, I want to reiterate, thank you so much for all the time that you've given us. I do want to share with you that we got feedback from your interviews, and people were very impressed with your professionalism and your knowledge and
Thank you.
the time that you spent with them. So thank you for that.
Thank you. It was very rewarding, actually. I think one thing, if I may, over my career, I've worked with so many different unions, and, you know, of course, we learn from our mistakes. And early in my career, and I think I'm able to really understand where they're coming from. My dad, for example, he was Burlington Northern retired, so very union strong, and just having conversations with him, even over my lifetime, understanding, you know, how that dichotomy works between, I don't want to say management and union, but just people in general. You know, we all have a job to perform, and we simply want to make sure we do it. But in our case with utilities, that job, you know, we're constantly being watched, we're constantly being judged, criticized, and we just have to go home at the end of the day knowing that we gave it our all. We looked at every avenue, under every rock. We treated everyone fairly and respectfully. And if the outcome doesn't turn out like we expect or hope, we just have to find a way to move on and reinvigorate the energy necessary to make sure we're doing our job, you know, the job that we owe our paying customers. So it's really, that's something that really gives me pleasure, because for every 100 complaints, when I get that letter from that lady, you know, or when I get that phone call that someone was so pleased with the way a customer service representative treated them on the phone with a really, you know, difficult situation, it just brings me to another level of respect, and it makes me proud to work for the organizations I've worked for. So I have no regrets for any of the organizations, even the tougher ones, albeit even they may be the smaller ones. It was a life lesson, and it actually helped me make better decisions moving forward.
Okay. All right. Final opportunity, everyone.
Aaron, thank you so much for being a part of this process.
No, again, my pleasure. Thank you. It was just very rewarding. It was a pleasure working with you all.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. I look forward to hearing back from you guys soon. So are you planning on making a decision in the next week or this week? Or I guess I'm not familiar with the next step.
Yeah, I have to get together with everyone and see what their schedule is. And yeah, we will have a meeting and make a selection. So
the announcement, I take, will be formally introduced at a meeting, at a board meeting.
I'm not sure it will be at our board meeting, but we will have a meeting scheduled.
Okay. I just didn't know if it was closed or open.
I think we'll have to decide that.
Okay.
That. Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, all I'm going to say is if I, please forgive me, I'm not ignoring you. If I get a phone call in the next, through Sunday, I'm out on the middle of Lake Mead in a houseboat. I have no idea what the cell phone situations.
Okay.
As soon as we're done here, we're walking out the door to go on vacation. So
Okay, well then you go.
Enjoy.
we will.
Have fun.
All right. Thank you all. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye. To follow up on any of the feedback that we received from comments and from the different panels, we're also giving people an opportunity for final questions. We're giving you an opportunity for final questions or anything that you'd like to say to us that you haven't to us.
Sure.
So that's the intent. If we don't go the full hour, we don't go the full hour. I'm just saying, you know, until people are done is good.
Fair
And
enough.
I want to tell you, as I told Aaron, we are really thankful for the time that you've committed to this. We know it's been a little bit awkward, but you've talked to a lot of different people over the last several weeks and really given it a lot of time, and we appreciate it. Again, as I told Aaron, we had really good feedback on both of you, that you're both very highly qualified and very professional, and we certainly appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I'll ask the first question and then we can go in. One of the questions that I had after I read some of the feedback is, you've been at the utility now, what is it, 30 years?
It is just about 30 years, yes.
Okay. How do you bring fresh ideas, fresh perspectives into it when you've had that continuous when you've been in the same job, the same place of employment, not the same job for the last 30 years?
Right. No, I think that's a great question. And, you know, I feel like in the 5 or 6 different roles that I've had here, I've always been able to bring fresh ideas and fresh perspectives. It is a new role for me. Even the permanent CEO role will be different than the interim, because of, you know, the other responsibilities I still had while I was here. And so I think every time you move around, even within the same organization, it gives you the opportunity to have fresh perspectives. But there are a couple of things that I'm really looking forward to doing that I think are going to be helpful in that regard. And one of those is becoming more involved with professional association, and specifically AMWA. You know, AMWA is the Association of Metropolitan Water Agencies. It's the largest water utilities in the nation, and we are one of the smaller utilities that's able to be a member of AMWA. You have to have 100,000 customers. I've had the opportunity to go to just one conference this year, one of their conferences, and it was just outstanding. A lot of forward-looking, a lot of utilities that are facing similar problems or problems that we aren't even facing yet. So there are a lot of opportunities out there like that. There are also organizations right here within the city of Des Moines. The partnership is a great example. I've not had a lot of opportunity to be involved in those types of organizations in my experience. I think that being involved in those kind of organizations and hearing what's going on and seeing what's happening in the city would be another opportunity. And then the third thing, and maybe most importantly, is I think I've shared with you all before, I think we need to do some facilitated strategic planning. Bring someone in who is a professional in that regard. We'll look at the trends in the water industry. We'll look at the trends in the nation. We'll look at the trends in our community, and together we can decide what's important and what goals we need to set for this utility and move towards those goals. So I think there are a lot of ways that an individual can bring fresh ideas. I'm looking forward to doing that.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
I want to piggyback. First, thank you, Ted, for joining us again and going through this process and being flexible along the way. I wanted to kind of piggyback on Diane's question, similarly, because you've been with the utility for so many years. How will you make sure that you don't maintain I want to make sure I ask this right. You don't maintain status quo for the sake of status quo, but are able to address or see areas of improvement. The example I would use is, you have a broken water fountain and you just don't use that water fountain because it's the broken one. How do you make sure that you see those areas of improvement and take action for them?
One of the things that I've enjoyed about the fact that I've moved around within the utility, I've worked in several different departments and in a number of different positions, is the fresh perspective that it brings. And every time I move into a new role, I see things that other people didn't see or didn't have the opportunity to see because they were in that position for a period of time. Each time I've moved into a new role, I've found ways to change things. And just a couple of examples that I can share with you. When I moved into the water production department several years ago, they had a maintenance management system there that they were trying to implement, but they couldn't get it done. It was just too big of a lift, too many pieces of equipment. 5 days after I moved into that department, we literally commissioned the McMullen treatment plant with thousands of new pieces of equipment, and it just seemed like it was an insurmountable task. Well, I looked at the opportunities before us, and what I did was took some of our relief operators who are normally doing a little bit of preventive maintenance, painting, those kind of things, and I made those people specialists in various areas of the utility. One of them did our vibration analysis, and one of them did the setup and commissioning of that maintenance management system. That was a new approach, a new perspective. It's something that you see when you come into a position with a fresh set of eyes. And so I think that it's a new role for me, and it's a new opportunity. Something else that I've shared with at least one of you, I can't remember how many were on the call when we talked about this specifically, but I'm looking forward to a change. I've been doing operations in the utility industry for 35 years, and I'm ready for a change. I want to look at different things. I want to get involved in different things, and I'm confident that when I find someone else, a capable person to take care of the chief operating officer role, it will give me the opportunity to engage with other folks, move forward, and see new ideas that will keep us from maintaining the status quo or staying in a rut, which is the last thing that we want to do as a utility.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ted, I'm going to paint with a broad brush just to make a point and don't get, well, anyway, one of the things that I think that you might agree with is when Bill Stowe came to us, one of the things that Bill was able to improve was our relationship with the union. Before Bill joined us, we had many grievances. We were negotiating a contract every year, and things seemed to improve greatly. And I appreciate your previous comments about coming into every job you've had at Waterworks with a fresh perspective. You've clearly demonstrated that. But you also carry a little baggage with you, right? I mean, we all do when we go from job to job. Thinking about that picture I painted with a broad brush about the union, tell me a little bit about, how are you going to come in to make sure that you're evaluating things, with that fresh mind? I mean, my concern is I've heard from some union members and others that they fear that we're going to backslide. We're going to go back to where we were before Bill. How do you address that?
First of all, I will say that I was engaged with the union before Bill came, and I was engaged with the union after Bill was here, and Bill did do a great job there. Bill had a completely different perspective and a different approach, and I've learned a lot from that. I will also share that before Bill was here, I had the opportunity to move into a new role, in large part because the employee culture and the union relations in that area were in need of improvement, let's say. And it took some time, but over time, and before Bill was here, I think we did improve relations there, and we made some changes, the types of changes that you're, I think, talking about, where we helped people understand that the old ways weren't the right ways, and that there are better ways of doing things. I think going forward, the union is going to be a critically important partner. I see the union as a valuable ally in making Des Moines Waterworks the best place it can be. There's really no reason that Des Moines Waterworks shouldn't be the best place to work in Iowa. I mean, we have great pay and great benefits when we're doing something critically important, but unfortunately, for whatever reason, not everybody sees it that way right now, and we need to work on that. And that's one of my priorities is working on the employee experience here at Des Moines Waterworks. You know, how am I going to ensure that we don't backslide? Well, I can assure you that my perspective on union relations is more aligned with Bill's than it is not. And I have what I consider to be an open and honest relationship with the union today. I had to laugh. One of the questions that I was asked in my union interview on Wednesday of last week was, how do I take criticism? And I said, well, I've taken it from you, specifically the person who asked the question, every day for the last 15 years, so I think I take it pretty well. And I do think that I'm open to criticism and to suggestion, and I've gotten a lot of, frankly, criticism and suggestion from the union, and I think we've moved a lot of things forward. I want to maintain that. I want to continue that. And I recognize the tremendous value that we have in a positive union relationship. I would like to say that we have a positive union relationship, and I intend to maintain that.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Ted, as the other board members have said, thank you. I feel like you've had a 14-month interview here for the CEO position. And so my question really goes to that. In the last 14 months, obviously you were in an interim role, but what would you say if you were to highlight the achievements over the last 14 months that you definitely played a role in? What would those be?
You know, there are a number of things that happened in the last 14 months. And I think that it started with the loss of our CEO, and not just any CEO. You know, Bill was bigger than life, and he was a passionate leader and someone that we had a lot of respect for. And so it was shocking, and I felt good that the team was able to carry on and not backslide, if you will, in terms of a lot of things: union relations, regional relations, water quality. We moved forward, even though we lost our CEO fairly suddenly and certainly well before we expected. But in terms of a couple of specific things that we were able to accomplish in the last year that I feel good about, and maybe they're not things that you would think about, but one is the improvements that we've made on Fluor Drive. We haven't seen them yet, but we were able to meet with the city and the Ruans early in the year and help them understand all of the challenges that we have on Fluor Drive with the plantings and the die out and the safety of our employees and the traveling public and the interference we have there, and help them understand that it was time for a change. We've been doing that maintenance on Fluor Drive for 20 years. We had great conversations. Initially, they were, I think, a little reluctant to make dramatic change, but they agreed to have someone look into that, and they did. They had the original consultant come back and take us a complete look at everything, and some of this I don't even understand, but the microclimates along Fluor Drive and the appropriateness of the plantings and the traffic patterns and the accident data and the whole thing. They've come up with a completely new plan for Fluor Drive that we will be implementing out there over the next 3 to 5 years as they do the Fluor Drive construction. It's going to be more resilient, it's going to take less maintenance, and it's going to be safer for the traveling public and for the folks who are working on it. And I feel really good about that. I think that that's going to be a much better solution for the entryway into the city of Des Moines. Another thing that I think went pretty well is our negotiations with the city over the zoo and their water situation. You're all aware of that. The city sort of unilaterally agreed with the zoo that they wouldn't need to pay for their entire water bill going forward. They did that to resolve a problem that they perceived, but they did that without consulting the board or even the staff at the waterworks. And so that created a lot of concern, and it was lost revenue for us, and it was probably inappropriate. Let me just say it was very frustrating to staff, and I think to the board, that the city made that decision without consultation. But instead of turning that into a bigger fight, we were able to go to the city, work with them, recognize the kind of costs that were involved, and find a way to share responsibility for some costs that we owe them in exchange for the costs that they were not going to be providing us. We were also able to obtain the property across the road that we need for our ground shop as part of that deal. And I believe we were able to build a little tiny bit of a bridge with the city, help with our relationship there. So yeah, fingers crossed, Graham, I agree. But at the end of the day, we ended up better off than we were. The city isn't worse off. And I think our relationship is just, one step in the right direction, if nothing else. The last thing that I would share is our response to the pandemic. Unprecedented situation. We are the largest utility in the state, but we are still a small company, and we could not risk having that virus get in here and decimate our employees. And at the time, we really didn't know how serious it was going to be, how big of a deal it was going to be. But we put together a plan that really became an industry-leading plan in terms of response to the pandemic. We had utilities from across the country calling us and asking us questions. We were fortunate enough to be involved in 3 webcasts that were nationally broadcast about what we were doing, and it was successful. It was a very conservative approach, which I think was appropriate. We backed that back down after the first 6 weeks, and we found other ways to protect our folks. But that's something that I think the team, again, did a great job. And let me be clear that I was there, but many of the ideas were other people's. Sometimes you just got to set the boundaries and get out of the way and let a great team do their job. And that's what I did in that case, and it worked out so far very well for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Hi, Ted.
Joel.
I want to ask you about your bandwidth, and I'm sure your answer, this will be kind of relate to some of your other answers, but specifically you've been obviously performing 2 jobs as COO and CEO General Manager. Presuming we fill the COO role with someone else, if you were hired, what tasks or duties would you be able to give up? And with that additional time, what types of initiatives and tasks would you be able to take on? In short, what would you be able to do with the additional bandwidth?
Absolutely. That's something I've thought a lot about, frankly. And, I think that I've been spending more than half of my time doing things that I did before in my role as COO. Regionalization is one big piece of that. While Bill was certainly involved in that, and he did some of the high-level negotiations, I did a lot of the preparing for meetings and giving presentations and going and meeting with each and every one of our total service and wholesale customers. I did all of that in the last year. I continue to do all the meetings and prepare all of the presentations, and in fact give the presentations. I also continue to be involved on a daily basis in water quality and operational issues. We're talking a lot right now about PFAS and the contamination and what we're going to do about that and how we're going to approach. And I have another meeting with the Guard Bureau on Friday to talk about what are we going to do with PFAS and those kind of things. I think that the working through the issues with the zoo is something that I would have certainly been involved with. So there are a lot of the things that have happened this year. The pandemic response is certainly something that I would have been right in the middle of as the chief operating officer, and of course was right in the middle of as interim. So all of those operational tasks I would like to hand off to someone else who can shepherd that through the day in and day out operation of the utility. What I would like to do is things like working on the employee experience here. People want to be a part of something. What is it that they're going to be a part of? We need to have mission and values. We need to communicate that to people. Working on strategic planning, facilitated strategic planning. I keep saying that over and over again, but I think it's critically important. A top priority for me will be bringing the regionalization question to closure. We need to do something there. And then beyond that, I don't know. I don't know everything that I'm going to be able to be involved with, but I certainly want to continue to be involved in water quality, surface water quality in the state of Iowa. It occurs to me that Des Moines Waterworks is not the only utility in the state that removes nitrate. So why is this a Des Moines problem? There are 24 utilities in the state of Iowa who remove nitrate. I would like to try to form a coalition with those people, give them voice, help them help us. There are a lot of things that I think we could do in terms of coalition building and building on what we started when Bill was here to try to move that issue forward. I think it's, we've talked about, it's going to be a challenge to change public policy in the near term, but there are other things that we can do, and I would really like to continue that work on questions like equity. That's becoming a big issue in the water industry, not so much in Iowa yet, but it's something I think we need to be prepared for as the largest utility in the largest city in the state of Iowa. There are a lot of things, and I'm looking forward to handing off the operational responsibilities and focusing on the planning and the strategy.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I feel like I had a couple questions that came up between now and when we started this process or started this conversation today, and I'm not sure which direction I want to go.
Okay.
But I guess I want to dive a little bit deeper on where Graham took us earlier. I'm not looking for specific answers, so to speak. I don't want you to potentially commit to something here and now when you're not necessarily in the role to know whether or not that's the best decision. But you talk a lot about the employee experience, and I was just curious if you have any abstract or concepts of what type of relationship or management practices you could envision putting into place that would allow more effective work with our labor or creating that employee experience or improve employee culture.
Yeah, a couple of things, Andrea, specifically that I think are important in that role or in that realm. One is people want to be a part of something. And I think people like working for Des Moines Waterworks, and I think they are proud to work for Des Moines Waterworks, but I'm not absolutely sure that they even know what it means to work for Des Moines Waterworks. What is our management philosophy? What are we about? What are we trying to accomplish? What are our goals? What's our mission? I can assure you that you could not find an employee at Des Moines Waterworks today who could quote our mission statement. And I can assure you of that because we don't currently have a mission statement. I think those kinds of things are important. I think they're important because they help people understand what it is that they're a part of, and it helps them become proud of that. I would really like to see Des Moines Waterworks be a leading utility in the nation. I think we already are a leading utility in the state, and that is to be expected given our size and our resources. We should be a leader in the state. But I think our goal should be to be a leading utility in the nation. And I would hold up our pandemic planning as an example, but I would like to see us be a leader in terms of our customer policies and our employee policies and our water quality and our strategic planning and a lot of things. And I think giving people something to be a part of is an example of something that we could do to help improve that. The other thing that I will say is that I think one of the most important factors in a person's job satisfaction is the relationship that they have with their immediate supervisor. I think that we need to help our supervisors understand that. We need to help them be relationship builders. We need to ensure they understand that that's part of their role. They need to have a relationship with their people. They need to be an advocate for their people. If they're thinking that, man, I hate all these people, well, they're in the wrong spot. I don't want to hear that kind of an attitude from a supervisor. So, we have to help our existing supervisors understand that and develop those relationships and build the type of satisfaction, the job satisfaction that I think will help improve our employee experience. And B, I think going forward, we need to hire for that in our supervisors. We need to look for supervisors who have the right personality to build those relationships. Supervisors have to be knowledgeable and competent, but they also have to be able to build those relationships. And so those are two thoughts I would have in that regard.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Did you have a second one, Andrea? I'm sorry.
I do, but it's going in a completely different direction. I'll just go ahead and ask it, going off of what Joel was talking about, realizing that this isn't necessarily a political position. Right. But as we've seen historically, policy comes up and it's a role that Waterworks has been forced to play for better or for worse. And I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts or comfort level feelings on whether you feel like you could, or your level of comfort if you were asked to be involved in more political minded settings.
Yeah, I'm certainly open to that, and I think I could. I'll give you a couple of examples of experiences from my career here. When we were working on our first ASR well, we did a demonstration project in Ankeny where we actually turned one of their ASR wells into, or one of their existing production wells into an ASR well. We had an EPA grant to do that, and I was the project manager on the project. And as we got doing it, we realized that the water law in Iowa is different than a lot of other places. And in Iowa, all of the water is a water of the state. So when we put the water down into the ground using ASR technology, suddenly it wasn't ours anymore. It became a water of the state. And so we had to change the law, basically. Well, we had a person at the time who did our lobbying, and she was very good at that, but she was not versed in the technology that we were talking about. And so it fell to me to go to the Capitol and she of course scheduled the meetings, but we had those conversations with the political leaders in the state of Iowa, and we were able to get the law changed so that now when we put the water down there, it's still ours and no one else can come and take it. So, I worked in the political arena in that case fairly successfully. Maybe that's not exactly what you're thinking, but the other example relates to the legislative changes that were attempted after the lawsuit. And I actually spent quite a little bit of time up at the Capitol dealing with the politics of that and speaking at committee meetings and public hearings and talking to legislators and lobbyists and helping everyone understand our position. So I think that I'm certainly capable of working within the political process and helping our political leaders understand technical subjects, complicated subjects, in a way that helps them be comfortable to vote in our favor. I think that that's actually a strength that I have, is taking complicated subject matter and explaining it in a way that people can understand it. And I think that from a political perspective, that's often what is needed. Our political leaders especially are asked to make decisions after minutes or at most hours of time to digest an entire topic or subject matter. And so the ability to help them understand and make them comfortable is something that I can bring, and I think is critically important, even if I'm not a politician or particularly politically savvy. But we have folks who can help with that.
Great. I appreciate you taking some time to talk about that. Thank you.
Pleasure. Absolutely.
Andrea, I appreciate that question because it kind of, I was contemplating something that Ted said when he was talking about our relationship with the city, and then the way you phrased that question made me think about this. And so, Ted, obviously a board like this and the CEO and general manager have an interesting relationship. I mean, we're a policy setting body, and we hire the CEO and general manager to go manage the organization. But yet we're all in this fight together, and we can support each other. And if we're working well, we do support each other well. And so I was thinking about the city and the great frustration that the city has caused me as a board member, over these years, that we always seem to come, when we start a discussion with the city, we always start almost in an adversarial role where we, despite the fact that we pay pilot and we take care of Fluor and we're participating in the Botanical Garden, and the list goes on, the city always seems to be coming at us for more, or feeling like we're, making us feel like we're not pulling our fair share. And so with all that buildup, what I was thinking on, and what Andrea made me think about is, our relationship, our being the board and the CEO and general manager. And maybe you don't have an answer to this question specifically, but I guess I'm testing your thought on this, on how comfortable with you are this. There's going to be a time where you're going to want to come to the board as CEO and general manager and ask us to play a role. And the city is a good example. How do we support you in that role? We're not policymakers in that role necessarily, but how do we support each other? And so is there anything in these last 14 months or in your last 30 years that makes you think, when I get that job, I want to do something a little different with the board. I want to improve the working relationship with the board so that we can better solve some things like our relationship with the city and others.
Graham, I am by nature a coalition builder. I want to work cooperatively with everyone. Now, that doesn't always work, and you sometimes have to go in another direction, but I very much want to work with the board. Now, I fully understand that if I get this position, you're the bosses, and I'm working for you, and I take direction from you. But that being said, I'm hopeful that we will all be headed in the same direction, and we will work together. This board has skill sets that I don't have, and I'm looking forward to working with and relying on the board in those cases. I think I bring skills to this position that will be valuable to the board, and that I can bring to bear in situations where in the past we have struggled. And the relationship with the city is one example. I've been here for 30 years, but I don't have a lot of baggage, if you will, with the city. I've had an excellent working relationship with the city. I worked with them for many, many years when I was in engineering. We did countless projects together in a very cooperative way. And then I left or I didn't leave, but I went to a role where I didn't have nearly as much involvement. And so now I'm back, and they sort of have a fond memory of that. You know, we can take advantage of that. When I heard what happened with the zoo, I called Scott Sanders the same day, and I just said, Scott, why do you do this? Why are you always poking us in the eye? And he said, well, I don't know. I said, well, let's not do that. Let's work together. And I feel like we worked through that situation pretty effectively. We've had a couple of other situations. We got one going on right now that's got my dander up just a little bit because their contractor just went into 2 medians on Fleur Drive and ripped out all the plantings that we planted 2 weeks ago. Well, we're going to get through that, but it's going to help that we've gotten through a couple things already. And so I look forward to working with the city, to building a relationship with the city. I look forward very much to working with the board and building an even stronger relationship with the board. Just kind of by the way things worked out here, you know, I didn't have an opportunity to work with everyone as closely. That's just a function of how things went, and then in Joel's case, the pandemic, and you know, but I want to set up an opportunity for us to meet more often, and I tried to do that, and then there was a pandemic. I think we might have each met once or twice, but I look forward to that, and I welcome input from the board. I welcome cooperation with the board, and I think we can make a strong team. I certainly don't believe that any one person has all the good ideas, and that's not how I work.
I appreciate that. And I just, you know, I think for my benefit and, you know, for yours, if you get this job, I want to plant that seed that just because we've done things this way for the last 30 years, we've acted this way as a board, or the relationship with the CEO and general manager has been this, it doesn't have to be. And I think we've done a pretty good job in the last few months of working together that way, of figuring out, you know, how do we build on each other's strengths? And then I want to see more of that. So I appreciate that answer. And I guess more than anything, I'm just planting that seed that with everything else, you know, we would ask you to do, you know, rethinking the union relationship, you know, thinking about regionalization, all those things, throw the board into that pot. And how do we even improve our working relationship?
I 100% agree, Graham, and I'll tell you, the CEO can't do this job effectively without a positive board relationship, and the CEO can't do this effectively without a positive union relationship. CEO might be able to do this without a positive city relationship, but I don't want to try that either. I mean, I'm hopeful that we can build relationships.
Most anything would be better.
Yeah. Well, agreed. So it's a low bar, but we're going to improve.
Thank you for that. I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I couldn't. I took a poke at the city, and maybe I shouldn't have. Apologies.
Not a problem.
Ted, I want to jump in because I have a similar question with maybe just a slightly different angle. And I thought, great question from Graham and great comments as well. And that's, if you're selected and have your druthers, what role does the board play in pushing regionalization ahead? You know, I'd like to, and an honest question, because I don't know what the right answer is, but I suspect there's more we can do than just approving or, you know, disapproving things you bring before us. I don't know if it's helping make connections or providing a megaphone for, you know, messages we want to get out there. What can we do if you're selected to help you in pushing regionalization forward?
You know, there's a lot, Joel. I think I'm a little reluctant because I think we've tried so many of these things already, but there's a lot that can be done. I see my role as first and foremost dealing with the staff people at the cities and the water utilities, and helping them understand and making them comfortable and trying to bring them around. In some cases, that's hard, and they don't necessarily want to change, or they don't necessarily trust that the change is in their best interest. Maybe they don't see the benefit in the near term. And so I think the board can be very helpful with the electives in all of these situations and helping them understand and building relationships there. I see the board more on that plane, with the electives who are very much policy-making folks. So I think that could be very helpful, helping them understand and ensuring that we're getting a long enough look here, because I think if everybody looks at this as a long enough game, working together as a strong regional entity is the only possible way you could go. I think that it's something of a political question. And Andrea alluded to this a couple of times already. I'm going to admit to you, and you probably already know this, but I am not a particularly political being. I don't think politically. I have not been particularly politically involved, and so I could use help in that arena. I want this to be the right answer because it's the best for everyone, and because I truly believe that a strong regional entity is in everyone's best interest. I absolutely believe that 100%, and that's what I'm trying to focus on. But there may be a political perspective on this that would be helpful as well, and I could really use the board's help in that arena as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ted, sounds like we may be wrapping it up, but do you have any final questions for us?
Sue, I really don't have questions. I've asked my questions when we had our one-on-one meetings, and I think I got the answers I was looking for. I have a couple comments I would love to share if you would entertain them. I hear from the questioning, or I sense from the questioning, that there's a concern that the person who's been around a long time is not going to be able to take us in new directions, and they're going to be stuck in the mud. And while I understand that perspective, I want you to be aware that if I get this job, that certainly isn't my plan. I've been doing this for 30 years. I want to do something different. Those 30 years, though, did prepare me for this role. This is a job that I really want to do. I want to do it as the CEO. I want to move this utility forward. I want to work for a leading utility in the nation. I want to provide a positive customer experience, and I want to provide a positive employee experience, and I think I can do that. So I think the board has done an outstanding job of recognizing that this is an important decision and taking us through a rigorous process. And I only hope that at the end of the day, you will select me and we will move forward together. So thank you for the opportunity. I look forward to hearing from you.
Ted, thank you. Thanks for going through this process. I agree with you that it is it's a long process, and it can be hard, and I appreciate what you have to go through. And to have spent the last 14 months following the loss of Bill and the pandemic and 100 other things, and then to have to go through this little dance, it doesn't go unappreciated. I appreciate your willingness to go through this process.
Thank you, Graham. Appreciate that.
Well said, Graham. Thank you very much, Ted. Look forward to talking soon.
Thank you.
Dan, I think you're muted still.
All right, do we need to do anything further today? Hearing nothing, we'll adjourn. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.